Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. It's an honor to be here with you tonight. Thank you so much to the San Diego Regional Chamber of Commerce for hosting us at this beautiful venue. And thank you for the important work that you do every day to create jobs, support infrastructure, and ensure that neighborhoods thrive across the San Diego region. I have to admit, when I was first asked to speak at this event, I was a little taken aback. That might surprise you because you probably think, oh yeah, she spends her Wednesday evenings giving speeches to 1,000 people. Yeah, it makes sense. Crowds that include the mayor, council members, business luminaries, community leaders, a bunch of my friends, my sister, hi Tess, my dog, no, I'm just kidding, my dog's not here, that would be weird. Anyways, as you can imagine, I was a bit nervous. But then I started thinking about what an incredible opportunity and privilege it is to stand in a room of decision makers and be heard. The opportunity to stand before you, the leaders who shape the direction of our city's future, and the privilege to be deemed worth listening to. It was not too long ago that someone like me would have faced tremendous barriers to being heard in a room like this. In 1985, the year that I was born, I'll let that sink in. I'm sorry. In 1985, the percentage of female CEOs of Fortune 500 companies was 0.0%. There were 2 women in the United States Senate. While women had been serving in the Marines since 1918, only 1 woman had been promoted to the rank of general. It would be more than a decade before Ellen DeGeneres would come out on the cover of Time magazine. Visible female leaders were few and far between. Visible gay ones were practically non-existent. So I might have a typical Marine Corps haircut, but my journey into the Corps and my role within it is historically fairly improbable. I know that this room shares a belief in the power of people, who, when given the opportunity, can overcome adversity, generate new and bold ideas, and build things that benefit us all. That shared belief is what has motivated you to grow your businesses, serve your communities, and build a more prosperous and equitable San Diego. We all share a tremendous privilege to be in this room tonight, at this beautiful hotel, amongst people who have the power and influence to positively impact many lives. To have access to one another, to power and to influence, is a privilege that many do not ever get. Your journey into this room, like mine, is a facet of both our opportunity and privilege. One is something to leverage, and the other imbues us with a sense of responsibility that connects us to our colleagues, our friends, and our neighbors. I'm here to talk to you tonight about those 2 forces, opportunity and privilege, that have shaped my life as much as they have shaped yours. My name is Janessa, and I'm a captain in the United States Marine Corps. I'm trained as a combat engineer, which basically means I can build things and I can blow them up. It's a pretty cool job. Before being stationed here in San Diego, I commanded a logistics detachment attached to an infantry battalion and deployed to Norway and Eastern Europe in support of NATO operations. I'm also a native San Diegan, born and raised just up the road in Encinitas, by 2 parents who are vegetarian, pacifist Hindus. Yep, they are white people and they are Hindus. I call them Windus. They're very nice people. Before I joined the Marine Corps, I spent 7 years between DC and Africa working for a number of organizations that focused on protecting civilians from genocide and mass atrocity in places like Sudan and the Democratic Republic of Congo. My job was to help advise members of Congress and the executive branch on mechanisms, whether imposing sanctions, enforcing no-fly zones, training international peacekeeping forces, or other means by which the United States government could mitigate the horror of some of the worst conflicts in the world and go after perpetrators of unimaginable violence. I knew I had the opportunity to make a difference on the ground for people in harm's way because we live in a remarkable nation that gives each of us the privilege to engage with our government and use our collective power for good. But after years in Washington, trying to protect people via the levers of foreign policy, I knew I wanted to do something more tangible. So, like any typical human rights advocate, I decided to join the Marine Corps. Don't Ask, Don't Tell had recently been repealed. This gave me the opportunity to serve my country without fear that my performance would be limited by having to hide a part of my identity. I'd have the privilege of growing up in a loving and accepting family, and I knew who I was. In fact, the most controversial thing about me, from my Windu pacifist parents' perspective, is that I'm a Marine. Now, as you can probably surmise, given my background, I did not exactly match the mainstream Marine Corps demographic. You might say I was a little bit of a cultural outlier from my peers, most of whom were guys from Texas who played football and could hold an entire conversation while maintaining a plug of tobacco tucked inside their lip. I'm certain that within this room there are many of you who have at one time found yourselves as outliers in your workplace, in your communities, or even within your own families. Times when you have had to shoulder the burden, responsibility, or whatever you want to call it, of standing for all people like you. Your actions, choices, mistakes, failures, and successes were viewed by many of those around you, justly or not, as those of an entire gender, race, sexual orientation, or cultural identity. Basic Marine Corps training is designed to make everyone uncomfortable, no matter who you are or where you come from. It's designed to push you to what you think is your limit and to force you to work together with the person on your right or left to accomplish the mission. It's not that who I was or where I came from was suddenly erased when I joined the Marine Corps, or that features of my identity became invisible. It's that the shared misery of people training together breeds mutual respect. And from respect comes trust. Trust allows you to disagree on ideas without questioning each other's values or basic integrity. Some of my closest friendships were forged in muddy fighting holes in the woods of Quantico, where Marine officers do our basic training. The Marine Corps has given me the awesome opportunity to connect with people from all walks of life, from all backgrounds and political leanings, in an environment of trust and mutual respect. But we live in a rapidly changing and increasingly siloed world, where despite the advent of technologies that have the power to bring us together, society at large appears to be losing trust in one another. The values that we share in this room, the belief in the power of people to strengthen their communities through service and industry, these values seem to be in question across America. Without trust that we respect each other and that we are committed to a common destiny, it is difficult to have the critically important conversations about the challenges that we face. One factor in this erosion of trust is that the demographics of the American populace are undergoing massive changes, and we are all experiencing diversity in a much more significant way. The year I was born, 80% of the American population was white. Being born in 1985 makes me a millennial, part of the generation born between 1981 and 1996. Depending on which human resource seminar you attended or which study you've read, millennials are concurrently described as purpose-driven, narcissistic, global-minded, digital natives, altruistic, and all at the same time incredibly, incredibly selfish. I don't take a lot of stock in assigning values to entire generational blocks, but I do think there is value in examining some of the incontrovertible facts about the demographics of the millennial generation. Because millennials aren't coming, we're here. Millennials are now the largest generation in the workforce, making up just under 40% of San Diego's working population. We are the most racially diverse generation in American history, and data shows that the post-millennial generation, those born after 1996, are even more racially diverse than we are. By 2044, America is projected to be a majority-minority country, meaning that Hispanic, Black, Asian, Native American, and multiracial Americans will comprise more than 50% of the entire population. As this transformation occurs, there is a clear disparity between the experiences of the millennial generation and those of preceding generations. Right now, in the state of California, roughly 55% of those over 55 are white. For those of us under the age of 35, our generation is 29% white. That's a difference of, well, I'm a Marine, I don't do math in public, but it's a big difference. The massive shift in demographics has major political and cultural implications. A Pew survey showed that more than half of white baby boomers and seniors view the rise of newcomers from other countries as a threat to traditional American values and customs, a view that is not held by the majority of the millennial generation. The generations are also divided on the role of government, with older people opposed to public services and higher taxes, and younger people embracing concepts like Medicare for all and debt-free college. But our young minority population has a long way to go. Under-resourced and effectively segregated schools are still the norm in many urban areas, leading to Hispanic and Black high school dropout rates well above those of white children. Here in San Diego, the high school graduation rate for Hispanic and Latino students is 20 percentage points lower than the region's average. And in the sustained high rates of Black and Hispanic child poverty, and it is clear that a range of solutions are needed to improve youth education and to support young families. These demographic and generational changes not only have implications for the future of our workforce, but the future of our region. They present an incredible opportunity for leaders who can see that the rising tide of young Americans not only look different, but also have different expectations for how the world should be based on who they are and where they come from. A few years back, I had a conversation with a Marine mentor that illuminated some of these generational differences for me. This woman is a complete badass. She's a combat engineer, like me, but she was one of the first women assigned to that job in the 90s. Previously, it had been considered too tough and too dangerous a job for a woman to hold. My mentor deployed into war zones with the Marines as one of the only women for hundreds of miles. She was decorated for commanding troops in combat and at home. She runs a 6-minute mile, like I said, she's a badass. She was asked to speak at an event highlighting the accomplishments of women in the military, but she turned it down. When I asked her why, she replied that she didn't want to be known for her accomplishments as a woman. She just wanted to be known as a good Marine. To some degree, I understand that sentiment. I think my gender and my sexual orientation are two of the least interesting things about who I am as a person and how I perform as a Marine officer. But I also acknowledge that those things make my experience in life fundamentally different than the experience of others. That no matter what, I will always be perceived differently, and my words will carry a different kind of weight than those of others who are not like me. In some cases, that might harm me. In preparation for this speech, I talked to a lot of friends across various racial, gender, and generational divides. A truly well-intentioned ex-sailor in his mid-60s advised me to consider that my appearance and manner of dressing could be off-putting to people in the audience tonight, and to consider wearing lipstick and heels as a means to put everyone at ease. Trust me, I don't think a 5'11" Marine in heels would put anyone at ease. He genuinely meant well. And to a certain degree, he might have been right. Being visibly different in a room can sometimes be a disadvantage. People project their biases onto you. Also, in preparation for this speech, I read a number of articles about the demographic shifts we've been talking about tonight. Almost all of these articles contained a line like this one, which I found in an article published by the Brookings Institute. The line reads, "As they transition from young adulthood to middle age, millennials will serve as a demographic bridge between older, whiter generations and subsequent, more diverse generations. Their ability to assimilate, advocate, and become accepted will be key to the successful transition to a more racially diverse nation." Their ability to assimilate and become accepted. Assimilate to what? Be accepted by whom? Millennials, America's most racially and socially diverse generation, are the new majority. We comprise a diverse workforce that expects our employers to not just accommodate diversity with HR trainings and inclusive slogans, although those are a good start. We expect to have the opportunity to climb, to take bold actions, the opportunity to become leaders, regardless of who we are or what we look like. We're drawn to organizations and institutions that seek to lift us up and lift up the communities that we come from, just as every generation before us has done. We do not seek to assimilate. San Diego is already a place of dualities and diverse identities. We are a strong military town with thriving progressive social values. We are a community that values law and order, and also the humanity of people who are trapped in poverty. We have a business-friendly economic climate and a community concerned about climate change. San Diego is a place where a kid raised by Windows can join the Marines, shoot an M16 in the morning, and go to a yoga class at night. These dualities allow us to see that we are not just demographic or ideological boxes to be checked, but that our lives and identities are inextricably intertwined. I believe that as leaders in San Diego, we share a sense of common destiny and a desire to lift each other up. to strengthen our businesses and our community at large. I started tonight by talking about the twin forces of opportunity and privilege. The opportunity of a majority-minority San Diego is that we recognize that our differences are our strengths. They allow us to approach problems from different angles, to prioritize different things, to reach different audiences, to challenge assumptions, and in doing so, to find new markets, new solutions, and empower new leaders. We don't seek to assimilate or shy away from those who are different than us. We seek to provide the opportunities to empower them. Opportunity and privilege. It is a privilege to have had your time and attention tonight. I thought a lot about preparing these remarks, how much I wanted to focus on my own story. Growing up white in an affluent community with access to great schools opened the door for me to attend a great college, from which I could launch a meaningful and impactful career. I am well aware that I have had opportunities that many have not. But I've also been lifted up by those who have used their privilege to open doors on my behalf. People who do not necessarily see me as a reflection of themselves, but see a part of them reflected in me. Whether it's because you hold an elected office, you run a successful company, manage the collective roar of a constituency, or are a leader in another way, you have power. You have the power to take on a young person in your office and mentor them, the power to educate yourselves on the right pronouns to use and how we're talking about sexuality and gender in the 21st century, the power to institute accountability measures within your organization to check institutional bias and recruit diverse talent. It is our obligation as citizens to consistently strive to improve the world we live in. The easiest way to do that is through the power of our example. By living authentically, telling our stories, and treating others as we want to be treated. That is how we fulfill our social contract. That is how we bridge the generational divide. Not by pretending that our differences don't make us different, but by demonstrating that we trust and respect each other enough to be different, side by side, striving to make this truly America's finest city. I'm so inspired by the leaders I've met in the room tonight, and I cannot wait to meet many more of you this evening. Thank you again for having me here tonight. Semper Fidelis.